Welcome. So, I played Final Fantasy 1 through 9, and I'm making a tier list. It took me 313 hours to play through those 9 games. I wrapped it up about a month ago, and it's taken me a while to kind of get to the point to want to record. But here it is. So we'll start off with the Final Fantasy games on the NES. And I mean, I have some notes just to kind of make my thoughts. So Final Fantasy 1 took me 16 hours. It's just a simple adventure story. Nothing too in-depth. And it's not even especially hard. It's just pretty simple. So I gave this a C. There we go. That's nice. Then Final Fantasy 2 took a lot longer. It's easier. It feels easier to get lost in that game. The world's really big. You don't have the kind of blank slate protagonists that are just like assigned jobs and you just deal with it. But the characters also aren't really developed and built. The guest characters you get throughout the game have that a bit better. The end boss is kind of a jerk, and there's a specific build you need to do to beat it, and if you don't do that, then you can destroy, or you can brute force it. Either way, but I mean, it improved on the form of the original game, but it didn't really do anything super fantastic or special to really make it stand out. It was better in ways and worse in ways. It took me 26 hours. Final Fantasy 1 took me 16 hours. And the extra 10 hours in Final Fantasy 2 kind of felt... I almost didn't want to finish the game. Like, it's short still, but a lot of that time was spent grinding or trying to find where I'm supposed to go. It didn't feel great. So this also gets a C because, I mean, it did some cool things. It gave real characters. It gave the keyword system, which is good but bad. The way you level is weird, and they tried something and that's good, but also didn't do something that great. So this is also Final Fantasy 3. This one, it took me 19 hours, and I beat the end boss on my first try somehow. I prepared. I didn't over prepare, but I prepared. The last dungeon's great. It really gets you ready to fight the end boss, assuming that you don't burn through everything you have. But also, in this game, music was great, especially for an NES game. The music's really good. The job system being kind of the predecessor to Final Fantasy V's and then therefore Final Fantasy Tactics, or any of the other job games in the series, it just is awesome. It really did. It did the series a lot of good. The story felt good. The guest characters not actually joining your party, but rather kind of following your party. That was 3, right? Yes, that was 3. Sorry, I played them kind of in a weird order a while ago, but yeah. So yeah, even though the protagonists are kind of similar to the way that they are in 1, they do get lines, and they have more personality than even your characters in 2. It's a weird way that it progressed, but this is definitely, it's one of my favorite games on the NES now that I've played it. 4 I beat same time as 3. Took me about 19 hours. The advancements that you get going from the NES to the Super Nintendo are apparent. The designs are more full. Everything looks a lot better. You have several characters, and they all get arcs. Are they all good arcs? Not necessarily. None are especially bad. They're all fleshed out characters. The main story is good. It's fine. Can't really complain. Thought it was the end game. The final dungeon overstayed its welcome. It was longer than it should have been. And I mean, this is also really funny. Apparently there's a way that you can make the end boss easier by like stealing an item from it, and I didn't know that, and I beat it without doing that. So I guess that felt pretty good as an accomplishment. But just the length of the last dungeon, if it was just a little bit shorter, a little less oppressive at points in its length, it wouldn't have been so bad. But it's still a good game. It's better than 1 or 2. I didn't like it more than 3. It goes in beef. Now 5. 5, same hardware as 4, but they really were stepping it up in 5. The way that they design boss fights, you know, building unique mechanics or different styles of mechanics for individual bosses. In this game, they really started to build the groundwork of the way that battles, or boss battles more specifically, would work in future games like in 6 and beyond, and then even into Chrono Trigger. So that was cool to see. The individual characters didn't have as fleshed out story arcs as the characters in 4. There were fewer characters that you had access to in the game. The dungeons, most of them were good. It had 1 or 2 that were just way too, but it was fine. The job system's great. Music was really good, with the exception of Exdeath's theme. I didn't really have one stick in my head. It was a lot of good music, but none of it really stuck, if you get what I mean. But I mean, the only real shortcoming the game had was the extra long. This almost goes into S tier for me, because the job system and the bosses all so well done. The main story was great. It's a great game. If you haven't played it, 100% recommend. Same with 3. 6, actually. So 5 took me 29 hours. So a little longer than 2, but not terribly much. Now we move on to 6. That took me 31 hours to beat. The music in 6 is absolutely phenomenal. It's crazy that Uematsu did in 6 things on the same hardware that he was working on with 4 and 5. It's different level stuff. He really, at this point, became a master of working in sound fonts. Wild. All the characters in 6, which I believe it's the biggest cast of characters in a mainline game, they got their own full stories, but it felt like all the stories were shorter than they should have been. They didn't really get to really grow and let you attach to them. They kind of just happened, which is good and bad. My favorite of all the character stories was Shadows, because it got a lot of little detail that other characters didn't get. The stories were good. They weren't bad. Don't get me wrong. It was fine. The plot was really good. You know, I'm sure anyone that's watching that has played a Final Fantasy game knows Kefka's good villain. Good. Again, in this game, it had a similar problem to 5. It had dungeons that were not great. And in some of those dungeons, there were some fight configurations that just sucked. Like certain enemy combinations where you would just get killed sometime. And that was not great. There were some shortcomings with this game. I had high expectations for this game and was disappointed with some things and was impressed by other things. But I don't think it belongs in A. It's a high B for me. Now we move to the PlayStation. Okay. You all know where this is. We're up to 7. For a long time, I dogged on 7 because I was being a hater, but I'm gonna be honest. I've played this game 3 times now. This was my 3rd playthrough, and it grew on me a lot more this time than it did in my previous play. I've changed personally, and that let me look at things from a different perspective and appreciate other things. And if I'm being honest, this was the first one that I played on this stretch of games, like for this playthrough of everything going to build this list. I played this game for 70 hours, and that's about the same as I had played this game previously. I platinumed the game, so to speak. This game truly defined the generation for most RPG fans of that era. Music was incredible, story was solid, it had plot holes. We all know. There are a million videos on the internet. All the characters have character arcs, including several of the less important villains. And the character arcs really made you feel something. The music. Just Cosmo Canyon, the Shinra theme, everything. All so good. The flexibility and versatility of the characters with the materia system and the armor system, and their differences showing through in their base stats and their limits. All that stuff is... My list of notes on this are so long, but most of them I'm from the Metro Detroit area, and if you are, then you know, driving over the I-75 bridge into Detroit, you see the Marathon plant. It's Midgar. There's a weird attachment here. This is the weird one. I don't know if I like 7 or 5. 7's definitely an A. It's still not quite an S for me. It has its own weird quirks. But 7 and 5 are neck and neck at this point. But we'll leave that for now. I'm only up to Final Fantasy IX at this point, so we're gonna come back to this later once I beat probably 10 and 12, 10, 10, 2, and 12. Next is Final Fantasy VIII. This was my favorite Final Fantasy game. I played. Yeah. It took me 34 hours to get through it, and I did almost everything. Again, this was my first time replaying it with a different perspective. What 7 gained, 8 lost, in my point of view, in a way. 8 still has some of the best city setting of any Final Fantasy. I mean, let's look at Dalit, Timber, Windhill, Fisherman's Horizon, even Balam. Just incredible cities, themes out of this world. The music isn't as... It feels less like it's thematically integrated into the game in the way that it was for 7. But music is just so vibe heavy, and it feels so good. So, there are so many good things to 8, but there are a lot of really weird, kind of bad things. I hear you about the junctions. I'm not going to argue about it. I like it, but I definitely see why people don't. But this game, in my opinion, Final Fantasy VIII still gets to be. It's the bottom of A tier, but it's still an A tier. The vibes are too good. Hang on. Final Fantasy IX. This was my first time playing this game beyond the intro. I could never get myself to play 9 past the intro. It's not going in D tier. So, the music was really good. It didn't have a ton of memorable tracks. But for me, Hughes Marsh, unbelievable top 5 banger. And then Kuja's theme, also just rip. Kuja's theme doesn't go as high as Q's Marsh for me. Q's Marsh, that's a top 5 track. Just like how from Final Fantasy III, Eternal Wind is top 5 track. Some of these games had incredible tracks that I never really put any real stock in until I've played them, and now I see. I understand. This game had some really cool dungeons, and I liked some of the characters a lot. Like Freya, really liked Freya. I liked Garnet. Zidane was kind of a nothing burger for most of the game. Steiner, hateable, which I mean makes him a really well-crafted character in his own. Vivi's great. I hated Ico. Just the cast was weird and kind of all over the place. The game was kind of weird and all. Chocobo Hot and Cold was the best thing. It was the best mini game from a Final Fantasy game up to this point. So much so that it felt like it was almost ubiquitous in progressing in the game. And that was kind of bad. It was so good, it negatively affected the game. And I mean, that's kind of all I have to say about it. It did a lot of good. It goes in B. I think it goes above 4, below 6. And at this point, I think this is the way I would have it. I don't know, maybe. But this is kind of in order at this point. 5, 7, 3, 8, 6, 9, 4, 2, 1, 2. That's probably about where I put everything. I could sprinkle in Final Fantasy VII Remake, Tactics Advance. I beat those, or 16. I'll do Tactics. Tactics is the best. The story's so good. The story's so good. And I think that's everything on this list that's from these 3 eras. Yeah, moving on, it's going to be PS2, then various other consoles. Yeah, I think Tactics is the top here, and I'm not sure there's anything that will take it down. But we'll see. I've played 16, but I'll come back to that once I make my way through everything else up to that. Let me know in the comments what you think. I'm sure you didn't like the way that I recorded this video. I did it in one shot. It's fine. I didn't feel like spending time editing. So, thanks for watching. I'll be back with another one of these at some point.